It was a Tuesday in late June, and London was doing that thing it does in summer where it can't quite decide what it wants to be. The sky was mostly gray, the way it always is, but there were these thin strips of pale gold pushing through the clouds every few minutes, like the sun was testing the water before committing. You know that kind of morning? Hesitant, like the whole city is waiting for permission to warm up. I'd been in London for 4 days by then. Solo trip. Something I'd been planning for 2 years and kept putting off because that's what I do. I plan things and then find reasons not to do them. But something clicked. I booked the ticket, and there I was, standing at the edge of the crowd near Buckingham Palace with a lukewarm coffee from a cart near the tube, wearing shoes that were about 12 hours away from giving me blisters. The changing of the guard was due to start at 11. If you've never seen it, here's what it actually looks like. Nothing at first. Just a crowd of people standing around waiting, tourists with their phone cameras already up, kids sitting on their parents' shoulders, pigeons doing what pigeons always do near tourist spots, which is beg and be completely unbothered by everything. A few policemen standing at comfortable distances, and then, gradually, you hear it, the band. That low, rhythmic pulse of drums before the brass instruments join in, and your body responds before your brain does. I was standing maybe 4 rows back from the gate, not the best spot, but decent. A woman next to me, older, maybe 65, American accent, green waterproof jacket, had been there since 9. She told me that without me asking. She was documenting it for her daughter who couldn't make the trip. She had a good camera, the kind with a proper lens, and she'd already taken about 200 photos of the gate, just the gate. I remember thinking, that's love, standing in the cold for 2 hours to photograph a gate for someone who isn't there. The procession started and the crowd tightened. Everyone leaned forward a little. The guards moved in that particular way they move, shoulders back, spine straight, arms swinging at an exact angle that looks almost mechanical if you stare too long. They've practiced this so many times that the individual has somehow disappeared into the uniform. That's the point, I think. You're not supposed to see a person. You're supposed to see something permanent. I was watching the third guard from the front when I noticed the other one. Part 2, something was off. He was on the left side, further back, and at first I thought I was imagining it. His movement was different, not different like he was doing something wrong. Different like something was about to go wrong and he knew it and was trying very hard not to let it show. I can't explain how I picked up on it. Maybe it was his arms. They were swinging in rhythm, but there was a tension in them, something too controlled, the way a person walks when they're trying not to limp. Or maybe it was the slight forward tilt of his head, barely anything but enough. The American woman next to me hadn't noticed. She was filming the main group. The band was playing something recognizable. I couldn't name it, I'm not good with that, but it had a weight to it, a formality. The crowd was well-behaved the way crowds at these things always are, at least at the beginning. Respectful quiet, cameras up, the odd whisper. And then the street performers arrived. I say arrived. They'd actually been there for a while, across on the pavement doing what they do, 2 of them. I'd clocked them earlier without paying much attention. One was a juggler with what looked like colored clubs. The other was doing that thing where you move very slowly, almost like mime, following tourists around. Standard stuff. The kind of acts you walk past 40 times in a tourist city and never really see. But something shifted. I'm not entirely sure of the exact sequence. It happened in a few seconds, and in my memory it's both very fast and somehow stretched out. What I can tell you is that the mime performer, and I genuinely don't think this was intentional. I've gone back and forth on this, and I keep landing on the same conclusion, drifted too close to the edge of the pavement. He was following a young tourist couple doing that slow-motion, exaggerated mirror thing, and he overstepped. Not by much, maybe a foot. But a foot was enough. The guard at the back of the left column was exactly level with where the performer stepped off the curb. The performer's foot came down awkwardly on uneven ground, and he stumbled, genuinely stumbled, arms out, that terrible flailing moment before a person decides whether they're going to fall or not, and his shoulder caught the guard's arm. Just his arm, just the shoulder to the forearm, a glancing contact. But the guard was mid-stride. Part 3, the 3 seconds. I want to be careful here, because I've seen people exaggerate things when they retell them, and I don't want to do that. The guard did not fall. He stumbled, and that's the word, that's the right word, he stumbled. His left foot came down a fraction early, His right arm came out an inch too far, and for one very clear second his body was not in the posture it was supposed to be in. He was human. You could see it. The man inside the uniform appeared for a single second, the way a face appears in a darkened window when you don't expect it. The people near me, the ones who were watching that part of the procession, went completely silent. I mean, it was already quiet. These things are quiet, but this was a different silence. The kind that has a texture to it. The kind where 50 people are suddenly holding a shared breath. And here is the thing that I cannot stop thinking about. He didn't stop. The guard did not stop. He didn't look at the performer. He didn't break stride, not fully, not for more than that one compromised step. He brought his foot back down. He squared his shoulder. His arm went back to the correct angle. His chin came up, and he kept walking. That was it. That was the moment. But it wasn't over. Because the mime performer, who had stumbled and caught himself, was now standing half on the curb looking absolutely mortified. And the crowd had turned to look at him. Not in an aggressive way. More in that communal way where everyone is processing the same thing at the same time, and you can feel the information moving through the group like a wave. He was a young man, maybe 23 or 24, I thought. His face had gone a dark shade of red that had nothing to do with the cold. He was wearing the mime costume, white and black, the classic setup, and his hands, which had been part of his act 2 minutes ago, were now clasped in front of him like he was in a church and had just knocked over a candle. He looked at the guard. The guard looked forward, nowhere else forward. Part 4, what the guard did next. The procession continued for another 40 or 50 yards before the change happened. I was watching the guard with the stumble the whole time, cataloging him. He was tall, broader than the others, I thought, though the uniform makes everyone look similar. Whatever had happened in that 3-second window had been absorbed, processed, resolved. He was back inside the role, back inside the permanent thing, and there was nothing left on his face to read. The crowd near the performer slowly exhaled. People turned back to the main event. The American woman beside me lowered her camera long enough to say, "Did you see that?" and then raised it again before I could answer. I did see it, I saw all of it. But the part that stayed, the part I keep returning to, sitting on the tube home that evening, on the flight 2 days later, even now, wasn't the stumble. It wasn't the guard holding his composure. It was what happened when the procession completed its movement and the guards took their positions at the gate. The performer had stayed. I noticed that. He hadn't moved off, hadn't melted back into the tourist crowd. He was still standing at the edge of the pavement, still wearing that expression. Some of the crowd had drifted, but a small cluster had formed around the incident point, the way people gather around the aftermath of things, even when there's nothing left to see. And when the guard reached his position and turned, as they do, to face outward, when he made that precise quarter turn, and his eyes moved in their official sweep of the space in front of him, he stopped. Not a stumble, not an accident, a stop. His gaze had landed on the performer. Now, if you know anything about royal guards, you know that they do not interact with civilians during duty. They are trained not to. They look through you. This is famous. It's the thing tourists test constantly, the thing that YouTube is full of people pulling faces, doing things, trying to crack the composure. And guards don't crack. It's not just discipline. It's years of conditioning. You are not there to them. You do not exist in their operational space. But this guard held the look for what I counted as 4 seconds. And something passed across his face. I'm not going to tell you it was a smile. I don't think it was a smile, not technically. It was something smaller than that, a shift. The way a face changes when someone acknowledges something without being willing to acknowledge it out loud. An almost smile, the kind that costs something. The performer saw it. I watched his face change in response. That burning red began to settle. His hands unclenched. His chin came up about half an inch. And then the guard's face went back to what it was. Forward still, the permanent thing. Part 5, the crowd. I want to talk about how the crowd reacted, because I think it's actually the most interesting part. Nobody cheered, nobody applauded. This wasn't a movie. There was no dramatic music and no one started filming the moment the way people film moments now, packaged and ready to post. What happened was more subtle, and I think more real. The cluster of people near that spot, maybe 15, 20 of us, sort of looked at each other. I don't know how else to describe it. There was a moment of collective acknowledgement, like we'd all shared something that didn't have a name yet. A woman with a little boy on her hip said something quietly to the man beside her, and he nodded slowly, the way people nod when they've seen something they didn't expect to feel anything about. The American woman finally lowered her camera and just stood there for a moment. "That's something," she said, not to me specifically, just to the air. The performer packed up shortly after. His partner, the juggler, had already drifted a bit further down the mall. The mime collected his few things from the spot on the pavement, a battered hat, I think, and a drawstring bag, and before he left, he turned back once and looked at the gate. The guard was facing forward, eyes out, completely still. But I'd seen what I'd seen, and so had everyone else. The little boy with the woman nearby pointed at the guard and said something I couldn't quite hear. His mother leaned down and said something back, and he nodded very seriously the way small children do when they're deciding something matters. I like to think she was explaining what discipline actually looks like from the inside. Part 6 after. I stayed longer than I'd planned. There was nothing left to see technically. The ceremony completed. The crowds thinned. The pigeons reasserted themselves. The gold strips in the sky had widened into actual sun, and the mall looked different in it, warmer and more real and less like a postcard. I walked along towards St. James's Park and found a bench and finished the now-cold coffee. I've been to other places. I've seen impressive things, coordinated things, large and grand public ceremonies in different countries. But I don't think I've ever seen quite what I saw that morning, which wasn't discipline, not exactly, or not just discipline. It was something quieter. A man doing his job in the most extraordinary circumstances, which is to say, in front of hundreds of people, in a role that requires him to disappear, in a moment when something happened that could have given him an excuse to be human, and he chose to stay inside the thing. And then for 4 seconds, chose not to. That's the part I keep thinking about, not the control. The 4 seconds, the almost smile, the acknowledgement that slipped through and then closed again like a door pulled quietly shut. The performer didn't know anyone would remember him. He stumbled. He felt terrible about it. He waited around, which took its own kind of courage, because waiting around after you've made a mistake takes more nerve than walking away. And the guard, whose name I don't know, whose face I'll probably never see again outside of that helmet, gave him something. Small, but something. I walked through the park and thought about the things we do when we think no one is looking. And then I thought about the things we do when everyone is looking, and how different those things are, and which one tells you more about a person. I think you know the answer. The sun finally committed. The park was bright and warm and completely indifferent to everything that had happened 200 yards away. And somewhere behind me, at the gate, a guard was standing completely still. Watching everything, showing nothing. Except for 4 seconds once, when he showed just enough.